Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in. Picture the absolute most delicate, luxurious, and insanely expensive spice on the entire planet. Got it? Now imagine that exact same spice growing in one of the harshest, most unforgiving environments on Earth. Sounds literally impossible, right? Well, that massive contrast is exactly what we're looking at today. We're going to dive into the fascinating mystery of a substance known around the world as red gold and see how this miraculous harvest actually comes together. And what's wild to start with is just the sheer, overwhelming dominance of one single region. A staggering 90% of the world's total saffron supply comes from just one country, Iran. Think about that for a second. If you're looking at high-end saffron literally anywhere else in the world, there is a 90% chance it came straight from Iranian soil. The entire rest of the globe combined, they just produce that tiny 10% sliver. So if we zoom in on Iran, the absolute epicenter of all this massive global production is the Khorasan region. More specifically, the areas of Ghanabad, Kashmir, and Bajestan down in South Khorasan. They're basically the undisputed capitals of saffron. But here's the kicker, and what's truly astonishing about these places: the landscape. At first glance, these are dry, rugged mountainous areas. It's dusty, rainfall is incredibly scarce, and water shortage, that's just an everyday, constant problem. It honestly looks like absolutely no crop could survive there, let alone thrive. Yet out of that dusty, completely dry earth comes a spice that commands a jaw-dropping international market price. We're talking $10,000 to $12,000 per kilogram. That right there brilliantly illustrates exactly why the outside world calls this stuff red gold. It literally trades at prices that rival precious metals. But, why? What could possibly make a plant pulled out of the dry dirt worth thousands of dollars a kilo? Well, the true mystery of that staggering price tag really begins with this incredible juxtaposition. On one hand, we've got an environment totally defined by dust, dry mountains, and just severe water scarcity. And on the other hand, the result is the world's most delicate, aromatic, and coveted spice. So the core question for us is, how on earth does this exquisitely sensitive plant not just survive, but actively produce the world's finest saffron in a desolate landscape where it seems like no traditional crop could even take root? The secret actually lies deep beneath the ground. To tackle that immense problem of water scarcity, Iranian farmers rely on a completely brilliant piece of ancient engineering called the qanat system. This is a thousands of years old underground water extraction method. Look, because water is so incredibly limited, farmers can't just flood their fields, right? Instead, they use the qanats to draw water from deep underground, measuring out every single drop with extreme care. This perfectly measured irrigation keeps the crop alive without drowning the plants, because saffron bulbs, they absolutely cannot tolerate excess water. So chronologically, how does this play out? It all kicks off at the end of summer. Farmers prepare the slightly dry, sandy soil where water won't pool up. They take these small, onion-like bulbs, called corms, and plant them 10 to 15 centimeters deep. Now, for the next 6 to 8 months, if you look at the field from the outside, it looks completely empty. Nothing. But underground, using those carefully managed drops of qanat water, the bulbs are slowly spreading their roots. All of this invisible, patient growth builds up to the beginning of autumn, triggering a frantic 2 to 3 week harvest window. And wow, what a bloom it is when it happens. Suddenly, in just a matter of days, at the start of autumn, little green leaves pierce through the dry soil, and along with them, countless purple flowers just erupt. The transformation is so profound that the entire field looks as if it's covered with a vibrant purple carpet. I mean, after months of staring at a dusty, empty landscape, the land is briefly transformed into something breathtaking. But as you might guess, this beauty is extremely fleeting. That fleeting beauty kicks off one of the most intense agricultural periods in the world. The whole harvest has to be completed within a tiny, frantic 2 to 3 week window. And they can't just pick the flowers whenever they feel like it. No, farmers and their entire families head out into the fields in biting cold weather before the sun even rises. Why? Because the second the sunlight increases, the flowers lose moisture and the precious quality of the spice starts to degrade. Plus, there is zero modern machinery used here. Every single flower is picked completely by hand, with whole villages working shoulder to shoulder in the dark. Okay, so once this massive floral harvest is hauled in from those freezing morning fields, the most delicate and honestly painstaking part of the process begins. They have to separate the actual saffron from the flower. And what is the actual saffron? It's just 3 tiny red threads. That's it. Hidden inside each of those millions of purple flowers are exactly 3 red stigmas. And these threads are incredibly soft and so fragile that they'll break with even the slightest tug. So, to put this all into perspective, the crucial point that truly justifies that massive $10,000 price tag is a staggering reality. To produce just 1 single kilogram of dry saffron, it requires between 150,000 to 200,000 individual flowers. Let that sink in. Experienced workers sit for hours, carefully and painstakingly separating those tiny, fragile red threads by hand from millions upon millions of flowers. This process alone takes weeks of continuous, exhausting labor. It's this enormous, meticulous human effort that makes saffron so incredibly valuable. When you step back and look at the whole picture, you really start to appreciate the sheer scale of this journey. It's a relentless sequence, starting with hand-picking in the freezing pre-dawn hours, followed by the excruciatingly delicate hand separation of the stigmas, then moving into traditional drying, and finally sorting and grading. The whole shebang perfectly captures the enormous scale of human labor required to pull this spice out of the desert. There are absolutely no shortcuts here. Now, the drying stage that follows is highly critical. If you mess this up, all that freezing morning labor is basically ruined. The separated red stigmas are carefully spread out in a really thin layer, and in many places, they're still relying entirely on traditional drying methods. The absolute key here is avoiding excessive heat, which would instantly destroy the saffron's signature color, its aroma, and its flavor. But when dried properly under these careful conditions, the threads shrink down in weight, but they take on a stunningly deep red color and start emitting this intensely sweet fragrance. This right here is the exact moment the true red gold is finally ready. But of course, not all red gold is created equal. The dried threads have to be sorted and graded. Workers are looking for very specific characteristics. Threads that manage to stay long, have that deep red color, and are highly fragrant, well, those are categorized as premium grade. That's the stuff hitting that massive $10,000 to $12,000 per kilo mark and driving the highest international demand. On the flip side, threads that are shorter, maybe broken during separation, or slightly lighter in color, they're classified as standard grade, put in a separate category and sold for less. Finally, after months of invisible underground growth, frantic early morning harvesting, super delicate hand separation, and careful drying, the spice needs to be protected. Saffron is incredibly sensitive. If you expose it to air, light, or moisture, its premium quality degrades super fast. So the final step before it leaves Iran is careful packaging. It gets sealed up in glass bottles, metal tins, or specially vacuum-sealed packets, locking in that sweet fragrance and deep color, totally ready to be exported from the dry deserts of Iran to high-end kitchens all over the globe. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. The next time you see a few strands of saffron beautifully garnishing a dish, will you just see a simple spice? Or will you see the patient use of thousands of years old underground kanats, the freezing pre-dawn family harvests, and the literal millions of hours of meticulous hand labor required to extract those tiny red threads? Knowing the unbelievable dedication involved in bringing it out of the dusty mountains of Iran, I don't think you'll ever look at a jar of red gold the same way again. Thanks for joining me on this journey.